What's up, Swolgers? Thank you for joining me on this video today, where we're going to talk about the big 6 in Strongman. These are the 6 foundational events and implements that you need to be good at in order to be a successful strongman or strong woman. So we're going to talk about why these 6, what they do for you, how to train them, and some common problems that people have trying to get good at all of these at the same time. Okay, so before we dig into all this, please do me a favor. Click the like button to this video and click subscribe to the channel to get more content on Strongman and all things that are going to help you become your best, strongest self. Okay, so the big 6, what are they? They're the log, deadlift, yoke, stones, farmers, and sandbags. Okay, so these are the things that you're going to see very commonly in shows, whether you are a novice competitor or you are at the world's strongest man. These things pop up over and over and over and again. So it's very important to be good at them and get good at them as fast as possible if you are not there already. Why is that? So one, all of these things are going to help you build baseline strength, right? So let's think about it this way. We have a press, a pull from the floor. We have a heavy moving event on your back. We have stones, which come up in many, many different ways. So this could be loading over a bar, shouldering, carrying. We have farmers. Farmers happens all the time, and this just correlates to a lot of other carries and grip events. And then we also have sandbags, which again could be carrying, loading, shouldering, all sorts of stuff. So if you have, all of these, you're kind of covering the different elements that you need to be good and strongman. It's not really just about being specifically good at these, but if you can successfully balance all of this, you're going to have, not just strength, but conditioning, technique, the basic mobility you need to get in the right positions. So it really does benefit you to really harness in on all of these different things. So this is like we talked about, they're common at every level. So let's just take this year's official Strongman Games, which is a qualifier to Giants Live, right? So you have people like Trey Mitchell who came up through that system and is all the way a world's strongest man. The official Strongman Games this year will have sandbag carries. They will have an axle deadlift for reps. They will have a log press for reps. They will have a car yoke. They will have a stone series in the finals. They'll have throwing sandbags, which is not technically on here. That's not what I'm going to talk about for sandbags, but guess what? When you train for these appropriately, I think you should be including those in. We'll break that down a little bit. And lastly, they have the wrecking ball hold, which correlates directly to back strength, full body strength in the yoke, and then grip strength, which you can build and develop in the farmers, right? So it doesn't really matter who you are, where you're at in your journey. It really is important to max out every single one of these events over and over and continue to elevate them all the way up. But that's easier said than done. So what do you do in order to do that without letting one physical attribute drop off or overtraining, right? These are the common problems that we're facing, and we're going to jump immediately into how to fix that. So problem number 1, how to program. Okay, so there's 2 things that solve this problem. A lot of people don't know how to really balance all of these different things. So the 2 solutions I have are, first, you need to think long term. Okay, we need to build a base with a solid, long-term, well thought out program that balances your volume and intensity appropriately to level up over time. Right? Now, when we're talking about some of these other things like yokes, stones, farmers, sandbags, right? You could reasonably have a log and a deadlift in every single week. But if you want to get really good at heavy yokes or heavy stones or really heavy sandbags, these are not things that you can just pound over and over and over again every single week over long periods of time. So the solution to that is to rotate events or even potentially rotate techniques, right? So like if stones was a very big primary focus and you needed to get better at that specific thing faster than some of these others, you could rotate techniques on stones such as doing lap and load 1 week and then one motions the next. You could also manipulate that with loading to different heights. So if you didn't want to completely just burn your system out all the time, let's look at like a sample 4-week, idea of what could be in your program. Let's start with a lap and load week 1, where we're going to a really, really high level. Let's say like, 60 inches. So lap load, you have that 2 motion. Following week, we're going to do one motion to that same height. And then we could drop the height down, go back to lap and load at 48 inches so we can test some higher levels of strength. And then the following week, that 4th week, do those 1 motions again to that same height of 48 inches. So in that, you're getting work at a bunch of different skill sets, because it is a skill in itself to load really high, just as much as it is a skill and a necessary component to load something really heavy. So when you're rotating events and techniques, you're allowing your body to stay fresh without just like pounding the heavy weights over and over and over again. That also allows you to train with speed and power, because you're not going to be able to load as heavy when you're going up to those bigger heights, but you will have to really throw more of your hips and legs into it at an explosive rate with lighter stones that will allow you to carry over that same level of force production into the heavier stones. So there's a lot of benefit into like rotating those different types of events, heights, techniques, motions, which allows you to just get better across the board at these, right? So problem number 2 is fatigue and burnout, right? This is like we were talking about with the last thing. You can train heavy stones for a couple weeks in a row, but that's just going to wear you out because it's so full body intensive. This is also especially true with the yoke, right? So with the yoke, let's kind of actually combine these two, how to program with the problem of fatigue and burnout. When you are being calculated with your progressions, you can plan ahead to rotate different events, not just like one thing at a time, but you could do yoke week 1, stones week 2, yoke week 3, stones week 4. Now, what you could also do if you like having bigger strongman Saturdays and you appropriately progress and save time for deloads, which are just periods of lower intensity to help you recover from previous weeks of fatigue, you could combine some of these up, right? So you could do, let's say week 1, yoke and farmers together, and then week 3, sandbag carries into stone loads. Week 2, right? So week 1, yoke and farmers, week 2, sandbag carries and stones, week 3, yoke and farmers again, then week 4, sandbags and stones. So think about what I said earlier with like rotating techniques and thinking long term. If you were to stretch this over like an 8 or 12 or longer week program, you could get so much work in testing these different techniques that you'll need at some point in your strongman career, right? So you'll know like, okay, this is a stone series. Because you're working these different types of motions, you might know automatically, oh, I can one motion those first 3, which is probably going to score you a lot of points if you can do that pretty quickly, right? You can do similar things really with all of this, right? Like farmers, switching around farmers 50 feet down and back with a turn, or multiple stops, running down, setting them down, picking them up again and coming back. You have really endless options here. Same with sandbags. You can do shoulders. You can do loading over a bar, loading onto a platform, carries. So this is a really good technique to get tons and tons and tons of technical work in different ways on a specific implement while staying fresh, right? But I always recommend to regularly schedule deloads ahead of time. I don't think this is something you should take just only when you have to. Now, of course, if you're super burned out, maybe you do need to, but I wouldn't assume that. I would try to work this in even as often as every 4th week of your training, just so you can continually and safely progress over a long period of time, okay? So problem number 3, no sense of self-regulation and maxing too much, right? This is a very, very common problem that people don't really know like where their body is and where their lifts are, as far as like, is this my true maximal weight? Could I get one more? Could I get 3 more? Could I get 5 more? I think it's very important to know where you are at with this, intensity, right? Because different intensities go to serve different purposes. It is important to have this like peak, very, very, very high level of strength, but it's proven by hard science, like we talked about with, trying to explosively lift up some of these lighter stones, that lifting at 60 to 70%, which some would describe as like an RPE 6, right? Just using different terms. Like if you move those weights very quickly and powerfully, you're going to give your body the ability to produce faster. So it's important to be able to recognize what that means in your lifting so you can apply the proper intention to it, right? So that is solved by systematically and long-term using RPE plus finding new maxes at the very end of your program, okay? So when you have an established max, you can work appropriately off those different percentages or this like RPE scale. So you might know like, all right, so I did 225 for 1. Then you can at least estimate, if you're not the smartest or most intuitive person with your physicality, you'll know like, oh, so if I did 225 for 1, I can probably do 210 for 2 or, 200 for 4. So in an RPE scale, some people would describe this as RPE 8 means you have 2 reps left in the tank. So, all right, RPE 8 on log, I can probably do 200 for 4. So if I have a RPE 8 for a set of 2, now I know 200 is my weight because I could do 200 for 2 and leave those 2 reps in the tank. So when you do this over the long term and have established maxes that you set only very periodically, not all the time, you'll be able to self-auto-regulate and then prevent yourself from all these other problems like burnout and fatigue when we're achieving the right appropriate intensities and stimulus that we need to grow and get better in all these different athletic levels, right? So problem number 4, becoming slow and unathletic, okay? I'm sure you can probably picture someone right now who is strongest guy in the room, strongest guy in the gym or at the competition, but he is the slowest dude or lady around, okay? And that can happen sometimes. This is, more commonly seen in powerlifting where you just have to stand in place and lift something in one direction. But what ends up happening is that, right, lifting heavy all the time will just make your body adapt to being slow. Think about how quickly you can move your 1 rep max. It does not happen automatically. It doesn't happen like very, very, very quickly, okay? So the problem and the solution to that is using appropriate percentages and accessories to maximize power. So this ties in hand with systematically using like the RPE scale. We've talked about this a couple times. There are different percentages and intensities that we need to work at to develop certain things, including speed, power, and strength. So over a long-term program, if you are appropriately scaling this up, having deloads, rotating events, and have your calculated progressions, you will be working all of those different levels and abilities. You should be working, even at the very start, levels of some sort of like hypertrophy that's used just to build and develop muscle, right? That should lead into some power training where you're developing the ability to move very, very, very fast and explosively and produce a lot of force, which should apply directly into your peak strength phase, which in theory is going to allow you to use that same sort of speed and force on heavier weights, right? These are just all the different things that we're asking our body to adapt to. But if you only lift heavy and maximal all the time, that will make you be slow and unathletic. So that's why it's important to appropriately look at the long term, build these things up, and respect the intensities and percentages that we need to work at, okay? So with all this big 6, I do have a program that is covering all of these bases, right? So if you have access to a Strongman gym and these equipment and you need to get better at these, which really is everybody because you're gonna see this at some point in time, I do have a program available. So you can check the link below in the description on Train Heroic, or you can get it for free with your membership at my community, clubstrongman.com. Okay? So in there, you'll also be able to communicate and chat with a couple other people that are involved in this exact program to bounce ideas off of, share your progress, and you can get technique, feedback, and review from me and a couple other coaches as well. Okay? But let's break down what is in this program. It's a 12-week long program with a 13th week to test out and find your new maxes. So this is very rarely finding new maxes. Okay, so we can systematically use RPE and percentages. And if you wanted, you could run this over and over and over again because it scales up and flows to work on all these different elements. You're not going to be just super adapted to one specific demand and get no more progress from that stimulus. We're working all sorts of different things. So you would be able to find your new max, elevate all your workload just a little bit higher because you're a little stronger and more powerful now. Run it again, and in theory, up, 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 okay? This is a 4 times a week program where we're working, again, all these different things, speed, strength, and conditioning, because it's not enough to just be good at shouldering your heaviest sandbag for one time. You have to be able to do things for reps. You have to be quick for long distances and farmers. You have to do multiple reps in a minute on stones. You're gonna have deadlift for reps all the time. Very rarely, in fact, do you have a max deadlift. Sometimes you have a long yoke, sometimes you'll have a short heavy yoke. We're kind of working on all these different elements throughout this program, okay? Now, what happens in this program is a lot of what we've already talked about. We rotate events pretty routinely, except for the log and the deadlift. The log and the deadlift are in this every single week because we can use those as the baseline for everything else. So we're getting log and deadlift work done every single week, and we're rotating through yoke, stones, farmers, and sandbags. So when we have a 12-week program, you're gonna be hitting all of these things at least 6, some of them 8 times in different varieties, but also we're tracking and scaling appropriately so you are making progressions. This isn't just guesswork where you're gonna go in and say like, all right, I'll just do some sort of sandbag carry today. No, we're actually gonna measure these. You'll get prescriptions on when to go heavier, how hard to push it, what variation you're gonna wanna use, and apply that based on previous week's information to help you grow. And like I said, this finishes with a test out on week 13. So this really improves everything. This is a really good program for your off-season work, or if you're just somebody that really loves all the different strongman implements. This will help you get better at everything across the board and help you succeed as a strongman athlete. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. I'm gonna drop the links to both clubstrongman.com. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on in there. We're gonna have Q&As with professional elite coaches and world-class level strongman athletes. You can have any sort of technique review or breakdown in there where different coaches will tell you exactly what you need to tweak. We have other free programs available, educational courses, and lots of other cool stuff like watch parties for big strongman competitions. So check out clubstrongman.com, or if you would like to just purchase this program as a one-off, the link for it is in the description down below on Train Heroic Marketplace. So give it a look. I really appreciate you watching. I hope you are doing very, very well. As always, stay strong and have a championship day.